Welcome to the Real Estate Scripts Podcast, the show that helps you know what to say when you're talking to buyers and sellers so that you can close more deals and earn more money. I'm Darren Tunstall, a real estate professional, coach, and #1 best-selling author. Let's get into this. Before we begin today's episode, I want to clarify some important points. I am a licensed real estate agent and my DRE number is 018534445. It's crucial to note that this podcast operates independently of my affiliation with Keller Williams Realty and any realtor associations. My primary goal with this podcast is to provide you, our listeners, with valuable information, insights, and practical tools. As a reminder, the purpose of Scripts and Dialogues is to come, learn, practice, and be prepared to fail forward. This is where we make mistakes and help each other out, but we're mostly interested in seeing how we can get better. First, we read through the script word for word, and then we go back and put it into our own natural tone, style, and phrasing. You won't know what to say until you go through the script. So, with that said, many people will say, that's not how I sound, and I totally get it. That's not how you sound. But that is the reason why we practice every day, so that the script becomes you and in your own voice. So, read it word for word first, then go back and put it into your own natural tone, style, and phrasing, and I think it'll work out. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to set us up, and then we're going to break out, and we'll practice for a few minutes, and we'll come back. This week, we're focusing on the seller transaction all week, with the exception of the buyer presentation on Monday, which we did yesterday. It is week 13. We're preparing the seller, and today's script is called Explaining Real Estate Agency Relationship to the Seller. And I'll go ahead and set this up. When you enter into a discussion with a seller regarding a real estate transaction, you should explain what type of agency relationship or representation you have with them in the transaction. You do this by reviewing the disclosure regarding the real estate agency relationship with your client, and you represent them with integrity, honesty, and loyalty. The requirements are strong communication skills, active listening ability, empathy and interpersonal skills, and knowledge of residential listing paperwork. The intention is to explain the real estate agency relationship to the seller, period. Any questions about that? Has everybody gone over the real estate agency relationship with their clients? Buyer or seller?
Oh,
Yes.
right.
Okay. And if you haven't, that's okay. That's why we're here, right? That's what we're going to do. We're going to practice that. So let's go ahead and let me see. How long is this? And we'll break out. We'll break out. If you have a breakout room that popped up, go ahead and go in there. Practice that for about 20 minutes. We'll bring you back for a discussion. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Corrine, we'll have you be the agent to begin with here.
Okay.
And as you all remember, it starts out with the agent in this particular case. You're already sitting down with your client. You're talking to them. We're kind of throwing you into the middle of the conversation. And we're going from there. I'm going to also bring in one more person that just logged in. They're going to listen in for a while. And then if we have time, I'll let them know. Here, let's see.
Okay. I actually have never experienced this type of conversation before, so this is like brand new to me. So
awesome. I love it. That's what it's about. That's what it's all about is, it's one thing like when we practice scripts and dialogues, if you notice through on the dashboard where it says what week we're on, if you notice, it says lead generation every other day, every other week. And because the #1 thing that we need to be doing in real estate is lead generation. But in between, hey, Amar, I see you. Just want to make sure. So in between, we work on buyer objections, seller objections, buyer presentation, seller presentation. We work on tie downs, certain words and phrases, because at some point, you're going to get the deal, you're going to get the appointment, but you're also going to have to, be involved in these other discussions too. So that's why it's not just constantly lead generation, even though I know that's the #1 thing that needs to happen. But you're going to have these conversations, and if you don't practice it, then you won't be prepared. So we're going to practice it so that you are prepared. Make sense?
yes.
Awesome.
And
All
I
right,
haven't been so formal about it, so this will be good for me.
Well, the words are there on the page for to use as a guide, as a pathway. So, if you choose to put it in your own words because you feel comfortable with it, then do it. If you don't, then read it word for word. When we practice scripts and dialogues, we practice it and we memorize it first, right? And then we internalize it, and then after you internalize it, we customize it. We put it in our own words, tones, and style and phrasing. Because not one of these scripts, not one, and there's over 250 of them, will sound like you. Not one of them. But the goal is to practice repeatedly over and over and over again so that you can internalize it, so that you can customize it and make your own. Make sense?
Yes. And full
Awesome.
disclosure, I didn't read this ahead of time. I'm trying to get a little bit of it. So I'm going to do
Well,
my best here. Yeah.
well,
So I
we
just
can't
jumped
have
on.
that.
Ah,
I'm just joking with
okay.
you.
All
All right,
right.
so here's what's going to happen. Amar, I'm going to have Kareen, since you logged in just after I closed it, we're going to have Kareen and Carolyn go back and forth. And then if time allows, we're going to have you run through it. I don't believe I've had you on before, but I would love to talk to you a little bit and help you through the system and navigate it and make sure that you understand everything about it and how to use it. Does that sound fair?
Sounds good.
Awesome. All right, Kareen, when you're ready, Carolyn is going to be your seller. And remember, you're in the middle of a conversation, and this is the point that we're at.
Okay. Oh, and it says okay. Carolyn, have you had a chance to review the paperwork to be signed?
No, I haven't.
Okay, let's talk about what a real estate agency relationship means. It means with consent, I can act as your agent. I am not the buyer's agent. I have the following affirmative obligations to you and all my buyers, and that is a fiduciary duty of utmost care, integrity, honesty, and loyalty. Does that make sense?
I think so.
I will also exercise reasonable skill and care in the performance of my duties. I promise to be honest and fair and act in good faith. I also have a duty to disclose all facts known that may be materially affect the value or desirability of the property that are not known. Is that clear?
Yes.
Very good. Now, it's possible that a buyer I represent may like your home. In this case, I will represent you and the buyer, but only with the knowledge and consent from the both of you.
Mhm.
I'll let you know in this case, I will let you know if this occurs. If it does, if it does, you should know as a dual agent, I will not disclose to the other party any confidential information. This includes financial positions, motivations, bargaining positions, or other personal information that may impact the price, including your willingness to accept a price that's less than the listing price, or my buyer's willingness to pay a price that is higher than your listing price. I can only share this information with both parties' consent. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Mhm.
My duties as your agent in a real estate transaction do not relieve you or the buyer from the responsibility to protect your own interests. You should carefully read all agreements to assure that they adequately express your understanding of the transaction. I'm qualified to advise you about real estate. If legal or tax advice is desired, you should consult with a competent professional. Oh, I've read this script before. Actually, sorry to break the script. You should consult with an appropriate professional in that field. You have the duty to exercise reasonable care to protect yourself, including as to those facts about the property which are known to you or within your diligent attention and observation. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes.
I strongly recommend obtaining tax advice from a competent professional because the federal, state, and tax consequences of a transaction can be complex and subject to change. Have I clarified things for you regarding the real estate agency relationship?
Yeah. Can you repeat the last part about the tax?
Yes. So the federal and state tax consequences of a transaction can be very complicated and subject to a lot of different changes. And so it's important that you talk to your tax professional, your CPA, or anyone who's in that field to be able to get proper advice about the sale of your home.
Okay.
Uh, okay, perfect. Let's move on.
Yep. So
Okay.
that's the end of
So,
it. You're just going to move on with the next set of documents within the RLA package or the residential listing agreement package.
so Sharon, I have a little feedback on that. If I may, just one thing that I actually had read this script before one time when I was here, and both my partner and I agreed that the competent professional kind of sounds like, well, it's just, it sounds strange. Like,
so can I before you go on, can I explain why?
yes.
Because I know what's coming.
Okay.
I hate to say that, but I know what's coming.
Okay.
There is a reason why this script is a little difficult to read.
Okay.
And there's a reason why there's specific language in this script. And since some of you have worked with sellers, the the thing that everybody needs to know about this particular script is there's some lines in here that are word for word in the actual agency relationship
Mm,
document. So competent professional, the tax type information, the motivations, those conversations throughout this whole script, they're not my words. They're the words of our contract that
wow.
we are explaining to our clients. And the reason why I wrote this is because I feel like it's so crucial and important that a lot of times when you're explaining real estate agency relationship to the seller, we're glossing over this document a lot of times. So I took this from the actual contract itself to have a true conversation with people so that we're literally covering everything that's in there word for word. Does
Fantastic.
that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes.
So
Thank you
I
for it.
agree with, even though I agree with you, it's competent, professional, but that's within our documents. That's
That
within our
makes total
contracts.
sense. I thank you for that. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I would absolutely agree with that. So thank you.
Does but on I don't want to discount what you're saying or disregard what you're saying. Having that knowledge, I'm curious, is there something that should I make it easier to read or should I leave it as is?
I think, with that information that you've clarified and with practice, I think those words will not be as tongue twisters.
Yeah.
I mean, competent professional is competent professional. After a while, I think once we just get used to saying, I strongly recommend that you get tax advice from a competent professional, it'll be more us. So yeah, no, I think it's fine with
Okay.
you told me. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do appreciate you bringing it up because this is what I meant by like earlier when I said not one of these scripts will sound like us. This does not sound like how we talk, but it is because we have to go over these documents with our clients.
Right.
And if we don't know what's in the contract sometimes, how are we explaining it to our clients?
Right. And I have to admit, I never read the word competent professional in there. So that's good to point out. And I think during this time too, it's even more important to educate. And so this is even more crucial.
Yeah,
Um,
you're absolutely right. With a lot of the changes that are going on in the industry right now, we don't want to get into any of that. But
no,
with all the changes, there's always a market shift. But it's important to communicate with our clients and to provide clarity. And I love the fact, like, if your client doesn't understand it, then let's go back and clarify that. Like Carolyn asked a question. All right, Carolyn, let's move on if that's okay. Carolyn, let's have you talk to Amar. Amar, do you have the script up in front of you? No, you don't. Well, it's okay. You can just answer it. Carolyn, Amar is your seller. You're going to explain the real estate agency relationship to him. And when you're ready to go ahead and get started,
Do I have to read off the script or can I just try to say it in my own words too?
you're welcome to put it in your own words. All I can say is follow it, put it in your own words. If you get lost, read it. So yeah, go
Okay.
for it. Go for it. Try it out. Do what you want.
Okay. This might be really bad, so just bear with me. Amar, have you had a chance to review the paperwork to be signed?
No.
Okay, perfect. So let's talk about what a real estate agency means. So I will be representing you as the seller. This means, with your consent, I'm going to be acting as your agent. I will not be representing the buyer. I have many obligations to you and to all my buyers. And that is a fiduciary duty of utmost care, integrity, honesty, and loyalty. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. So basically, I'm going to be loyal to you and act with respect and do all my due diligence towards you. Um, I will also be exercising skills and care in my performance and duties. This means I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be fair, I'm going to act in good faith. I also have a duty to disclose all of the known material facts that may affect the value or desirability of your property. Is that clear?
Yes.
Now, it's also possible that a buyer that I represent may like your home. In this case, I'll represent you and the buyer, but only with the knowledge and consent from both of you. So basically, I'll be acting as a dual agent, right?
Okay.
Is that like dual agency? I'm sorry, I'm asking Darren.
Yeah, you can be acting as a dual agent. Should you bring a buyer to the table as well. So if you're representing the
Okay.
seller and either one of your buyers or another person comes to an open house, for example, and they want to buy from you and they're not represented, then you're going to be acting as a dual agent.
Okay. So I'll let you know if this occurs. In the case that it does, you should know that as a dual agent, I'll not be disclosing your confidential information to another party. This includes your financial positions, motivations, bargaining positions, or any other personal information that would impact the price, including your willingness to accept a price less than the listing price, or my buyer's willingness to pay a price greater than the listing price. I'll only share this information with both parties' consent. Does this sound reasonable to you?
Yes.
Them. So my duties as your agent in a transaction do not relieve you or the buyer from the responsibility to protect your own interests. You should carefully read all the agreements to ensure that they express your understanding of the transaction. I'm qualified to advise about real estate. If you desire legal or tax advice, you should contact a competent professional. You have the duty to exercise reasonable care to protect yourself, including as to those facts about the property which are known to you within your diligent attention and observation. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes.
Cool. And if you happen to need tax advice, I definitely recommend contacting your competent professional, because the federal and state tax consequences of a transaction can be really complicated. Have I clarified things for you regarding the seller's agency relationship?
Yes. Sounds good.
Awesome. Let's move on.
There we go. Okay, Kareen, let's have you do it one more time fairly quickly and without glossing over it, but put in your own words.
Oh, to whom?
Let's have you talk to both Amar and Carolyn
Okay. Let me find my spot here. Hold on a second.
because that happens, right? A lot of
Yeah.
times we're talking to, okay, cool. So when you're ready.
Okay. So, Amar and Carolyn, have you had a chance to look at the paperwork to be signed?
No, I
No.
haven't.
No? Okay. No problem. Let's talk about about what real estate agency relationship means. It means real estate agency relationship means that I can act on your behalf. I am not the buyer's agent. I am your agent. I have the following obligations to you as my sellers, and all my buyers. You know what? I just caught that right now. I have the following affirmative obligations to you, and that is a fiduciary duty of utmost care, integrity, honesty, and loyalty. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
So I will exercise, what this also means is that I'll exercise reasonable skill and care in all my duties to you and my performance. I promise to be honest and act in good faith at all times. I also have the duty to disclose to you all items that may materially affect the desirability of the property. These are called material facts, and that may not be known. Is that clear? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, now it's possible that I may represent a buyer who likes your home. In this case, I can represent both you and the buyer, but both of you need to acknowledge and agree to this. And I will let you know, of course, if this occurs. If it does, you should know that I would be acting as what's called a dual agent. And I will not disclose to the other parties any confidential information. So this includes financial items, motivations, bargaining positions, or any other information that's personal that may impact the price that a buyer is willing to pay you, or that you are willing to accept from a buyer. I can only share this information with both parties' consent. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. My duties as your agent in this real estate transaction do not relieve you or the buyer from any responsibility to protect your own interests. This is very important to understand. You should carefully read all agreements to assure that they adequately express what your understanding of the transaction. So I'm qualified to advise you about real estate. I am not, however, qualified to give you advice in any legal or tax arena. It's very important that you contact a competent professional to give you advice in that regard. You do have also the duty to protect yourself. It's important that you do have a duty to exercise reasonable care to protect yourself. So including those facts about a property that are known to you or within your diligent attention and observation. Does that sound reasonable? I think I messed that up a little bit.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, wait, did I jump back?
I
That's
think you're good.
okay.
Did I jump back? What did I do? I think I skipped or I jumped back to another part. Okay. So anyway, does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
No.
it doesn't to me. No.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry
So
about it.
sorry.
Very good.
I think I went from the tax and then I jumped back to, sorry. Yeah, I need to make this a little bit bigger. It's kind of small on my screen.
It's okay. It's okay. You're doing good. And just so that everyone else can hear, the reason why this script is so difficult is because it is literally from one of our it's from the contract itself. So the residential listing agreement, at least in California, when you're describing agency relationship, either to a buyer or a seller, we should be going over this material with our clients. And this particular script is written directly from the contract itself. In fact, I even wanted to share my screen really quickly. And if you're listening to this, you don't have to see my screen to understand what's going on here. I'll describe it. But in this particular page here, I wanted to share with you like some of the I know they're kind of small, but it doesn't matter. What I wanted to show is like words, like for example, materially or competent, like they're competent professional, facts, material. There's other words and phrases that are coming up in here that make this script so difficult to read sometimes, but it's in our contract. And the point is that we have to read the contract so that we can easily communicate that to our clients. And I just wanted to show that those terms, those words are in here. And that's literally what we're doing. I don't write all scripts like this. A lot of them are much easier to read. But when it comes to some contractual things and preparing our sellers, there's certain things that we should convey to them. Does that make sense?
Yes. And Darren, it seemed a lot easier this time, actually. Once you gave me that information, I don't know if it sounded like it seemed easier, but it was easier for me. Just knowing that I'm using the words that are in the contract. I knew about the other ones, but just the competent one, I guess I just never caught. but I feel more comfortable saying that now because it is indeed in the contract, and that's I want to reiterate what's in the contract as I'm explaining this to them. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that did make it easier. Thank you.
And it becomes this, a script like this is becoming much more important and valuable, especially with what's going on in our industry now. You know, we're showing what our value is, and to explain that to people, to explain to people what motivations are and are not, is a big deal. You know, who are we representing in this case? We are representing the seller. We are not representing the buyer. You know, my fiduciary responsibility is to the seller. Now, there might be a time that I might represent, but I will let you know. You know, even by telling someone, by revealing, why are they selling? Oh, because they're moving. Well, you just revealed motivation. This contract says that you're not allowed to do that. This says that you can't reveal motivation. So there's a whole lot that's going on in here. Is there anything else that we can add to this conversation, not in
I
general?
I just wanted to ask you, Darren, there was a part that I got kind of stumped on, um, where I was telling them that I don't represent the buyer, but then I thought I read that in representing sellers and buyers. Was that just a general, I'm trying to, where was that?
Yeah, in the first paragraph. I thought that was weird too. I'm not the buyer's agent. And then-
Yeah.
but then it goes down to say, but if I have a buyer, I am their agent. Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
I
it says
understand that
affirmative
I do.
obligations to you and all my buyers.
Oh, right. That's where I think it gets a little confusing. Because I understand that we're going to talk about dual agency in that, but the positioning of that kind of seemed like, wait, I just got done and then I'm saying my buyers, what buyers? You know, I don't know. I'm trying to find it.
It's the very first paragraph.
Hang on just a second. I'm gonna try to blow up the
I think it should say all my clients, not all my buyers. I have a fiduciary duty or following affirmative obligations to you and all my clients. And that is a fiduciary duty. It shouldn't say buyers.
Yeah, well, let's look at this, because it says in the document, a seller's agent under a listing agreement with the seller acts as the agent for the seller only. A seller's agent on a seller's agent or a sub-agent of that agent has the following affirmative obligations: to the seller, a fiduciary duty of utmost care, integrity, honesty, and loyalty dealings with the seller; to the buyer and the seller, diligent exercise of reasonable skill and care in performance of agent's duties; a duty to honest, fair, and dealing in good faith; a duty to disclose the facts known to the agent materially affecting the value. So they're basically saying that, yeah, my duty is to the seller, because that's who I represent in this particular case. And my duty is also to the buyer and the seller to be reasonable, to be honest, to be disclose everything that I know about the property as well. Whether you're representing the buyer or seller, in that case, if an offer comes in, your responsibility is to disclose that information if you know it. Now, if you're representing the buyer, obviously, as your client, you're going to disclose everything as well, and you also going to represent them should a dual agent exist. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does. However, the first paragraph is that's not out of the contract. So I think it should not say affirmative obligations to you. And that is, if just take out that subtext and all my buyers, take and all my buyers out. And that is, because that's not in the contract, that part, right?
I could say all buyers, but yeah, it is in the contract. It is in the contract.
How about I have the following affirmative obligations to all my clients? That is a fiduciary duty of utmost care, integrity, because that's what you're
Yeah, I
saying.
think clients is a better word. It actually says all my buyers in the contract.
Or
It's-
you can put
it's-
sellers and buyers. I think what the maybe the stumping thing is the fact, because it's like you and all my buyers.
Here, let's look at it together, because we need to fix this. If it doesn't make sense, then we want to make sure that everybody.
It's
So
just
here-
contradictive.
Here, let me pull up the full screen. Here it is. Can you guys see this?
Mm-hmm.
I
Can you all
understand. I
see
just
this?
don't know that the client would. The
Yeah,
client would-
right. Exactly.
You know what I'm
No,
saying?
I
Like,
agree.
I know what you're saying, but
I agree. And I want to get it right, because if we're communicating this to the client, then we have to put it in a way also that they understand it too. And this is where this is the line right here where it begins, that you act in the seller's interest. A seller's agent or a subagent of that agent has the following affirmative obligations. And to the seller, a fiduciary duty of utmost care, integrity, honesty, and loyalty in dealing with the seller. To the buyer and the seller. So they're saying you have an affirmative obligation to both the seller and the buyer. And to the buyer and the seller, they're saying these A, B, and C things here.
Mm.
And that's to any buyer though, not just your buyer.
Correct.
I think it means the buyer in
So
the
I-
transaction, right?
Yes, the buyer in the transaction, whether you
Oh.
represent them or not.
You
Obviously-
have to do this. Yeah.
then not
Correct.
then
So I
not-
think
you
it's
take out
the
word
my buyers.
My buyers,
and
yeah.
just two
To you
buyers.
and all buyers. Yeah, to you and all buyers.
So if I go over here, so
That makes sense
Or
because then it's
on
just
the
being
buyer.
honest to all parties in the transaction.
So
Right.
take out my.
Right.
Yeah,
There you
Gotcha.
go.
I mean to
Yeah,
you
'cause-
and all
'cause right-
buyers.
Right, because
Yeah.
right above it, you're saying I'm not the buyer's agent, and then I
Whoops.
have the following, affirmative obligations to my buyers. It's like, what?
Yep. Yep. No, I agree.
That
Let's
makes
take out.
Right.
I'm going to axe my, and there we go. But you see how
Perfect.
this. So I appreciate that. So do you see how this is written specifically from
Yeah.
this
Mhm.
page?
Yeah,
Yep.
so you gotta make it more conversational. Which I
Yep.
mean, dual agency is just confusing anyways, because it's like I'm not gonna tell your information and I'm not gonna tell their information, and it's like, but then how can you really work for me then?
Well, you can, as long as the other says it's okay to do so. As long as they say, yeah, you could go ahead and tell them the reasons why I'm moving, or why we're,
Gotcha. Okay.
as long as both parties know that you're getting the permission to do that, then it's okay. But you have to disclose and put that in writing. My recommendation is don't do a dual agency. Refer the buyer or the seller or whoever it is, to another agent, and then get a referral fee on that. But keep the agents separate. That's my recommendation.
Yeah,
I
So-
agree with that.
I
Yeah.
feel so too.
Awesome. So it is 9:06, and I know that we went over a little bit, but I appreciate the info, because it is helpful to, like little keywords, just like make a big difference in the conversation.
That's
So
perfect like that. Yeah, great
No,
job.
definitely.
awesome. Well, I'm glad you all came.
Yeah, glad I was able to make it. I usually work at this time, so
Well, awesome. Well, jump in anytime you can. We want you here, and I love getting the different perspectives. Right, Emily?
Absolutely. Yes.
All right, so that's the script. I hope that you found it useful. Just head over to realestatescriptspractice.com for more resources and downloads. This podcast is for the purpose of education only, and it does not make any guarantees. We suggest you seek out the help of your broker, coach, mentor, CPA, or attorney. Brought to you by Darren Tunstall, California DRE number 018534445.